You know, today it seems like we have become a nation obsessed with true crime. The success of the new series Monster, the Jeffrey Dahmer Story, highlights our thirst for all things horrifying, gory, bloody, and real. Now, Monster landed the #1 spot on Netflix, was streamed for 200 million hours when it first dropped. Now, that's a lot of people spending a lot of hours consuming unthinkable, traumatic, and true events, really as entertainment, as fascination, as obsession. First, I want to welcome two men who say they were victims of Jeffrey Dahmer. The difference is they survived. Preston Davis and Billy Capshaw. Gentlemen, it's so good to meet you, and I mean that at two levels. It's good to meet you, and it's good that you're still here and alive and able to be met, because you now know a lot more about this individual you were dealing with and realize you could easily have been numbers 18 and 19. That's hard to think about.
Yes, sir. It's real hard to think about, and it almost happened. You know, I went into the military when I was 17 years old and left home from a place in Arkansas, a little small town. And moving forward, I got to Germany, and there was a jolly guy who introduces me to my next roommate, and it was Jeff Dahmer. That was the first day I was there.
Okay, so when you're first there, he
Yes.
says you're gonna have a roommate. This is him. This is Jeff Dahmer.
This is Jeff
And
Dahmer.
Preston, how did you meet Jeff?
I actually met Jeff. I was in Germany from 1977 to 1980. I had about 8 months left in country, and my sergeant asked me to train the new gentleman, which was Jeffrey Dahmer, and that was July of '79. He told me that he would promote me to sergeant, and so we were out on a field exercise in Belgium, and I was to train him to be a medic. And the last few days of our exercise, our vehicle broke down. And during that time, I was drugged and raped by Jeffrey. At that time, I had no recollection of it. The following month, we were at a Thanksgiving dinner. And I had actually got into an altercation with Jeff, put him out into a blizzard. He came back with blood on his hands, didn't know where he'd been, what he'd done. Now, the only way I found that out was I was on a serial killer website, and I found out I was in a book called The Shrine of Jeffrey Dahmer, which was written by Brian Masters, and it mentioned me by name. It described the incident, and that kind of blew me away. At that point, I still really hadn't put it all together. And then when I left, this gentleman here replaced me. And I was contacted in 2012 to do a film on men rape in the military called Justice Denied. And so that's when I met Billy, and we went to Albuquerque, and we were in that film. And then it just started to take off. You know, God started revealing little bits and pieces. I went through my records. I realized I had all kind of rectal issues throughout my career. And that's basically how we met. And we've been doing this ever since.
What was your first impression of
Jeffrey was a very obnoxious individual. He was very different. And when I say that, I mean, you know, the average gentleman at 17 or 18 would talk about when we played football or basketball in high school, or I dated this girl, or I dated that girl. That was never discussed. He was just a very aloof type individual, smart, but just different. And, you know, once he drank, his whole personality would change. He was very racist. He talked about blacks, Jews, you know, how he was better than. And I remember precisely, you know, what he drank. He was a beef eater's gin drinker.
At first, you think, okay, I've drawn a pretty good roommate here, this nice guy.
At first, but after.
The second night, things took a different turn.
Yes, sir.
What happened the second night?
He raped me, drugged me, and I'd have to, jumped out a window, two-story window, broke my pelvis and my hip.
Okay, now this was the second night
I was there. Yes,
that
sir.
you were there.
Yes, sir.
And you said he drugged you and raped you.
Yes.
And he also beat you.
Yes, he beat me so hard that I of course yelled, but if I yelled, he would hit me harder to stop the yelling. I just gave up. I just gave up, you know? And I cannot, for the sake of me, understand why anyone would want to glamorize that guy at all. That's sick. You know, it has to stop.
Dr. Phil, I believe the military knew. I spent a many a night laying in my house, and I'm like, how could they not know? Because I was in the military. He had a very short stint. I was in almost 10 years. And so, you know, I knew the structure on how it went. You make formation, which is where you're accounted for, where we have all the cooks, whatever. And then you run, you shower, and then you go to your particular job area. This man never made formation. Jeff made formation when I was there. How in the heck could they not know that this man was being tortured? I wrestled with that, and I finally came to the conclusion that everything in this spiritual realm or in the flesh is not for me to know. Something, God knows all. It's not for me to know, because I would have lost my mind trying to figure out how in the hell did the military, they had to know.
They did know.
They had to know.
I have a letter that was written to me about 10 years ago from a warrant officer. He was under investigation for the death of a man named Hans. He was the last one seen with Hans.
He who?
Jeff.
Jeff was under the investigation, I'm sorry, for the murder of a man named Hans. Yeah, they knew.
You watched a little bit of the series. What was your reaction?
I threw up. Made me sick to think that someone would take advantage of a community, a black community, African-American community, LGBTQ community. All these people that I've been fighting for since I've got hurt. All these people that, and then some guy comes in, and I have a better choice of words I can't use on TV, comes in and undermines everything that these people stand for. I think he re-victimized them, re-traumatized them, shamed them, the whole gamut.
That man had his hands on both of you.
Yes, sir.
What's your reaction to hearing him speak and say those things, knowing that he had you incapacitated, drugged, and had his hands on you?
I really suffered once I realized what happened to me, survivor's guilt. I basically suppressed my feelings with drugs and alcohol for a while. It's a miracle that I'm still married. But I blame myself for what happened to Billy because I didn't remember. And I remember when I met Billy, and Billy had told my wife what happened, and my wife asked Billy, how could he not remember? 30 years, Dr. Phil, I did not have any inkling what happened to me. When he got caught, I didn't realize what happened to me. I was actually watching a show on serial killers in 1992 in Virginia, and what cued me was they showed the patch. We had an 8 on our uniform, and at that point, I still didn't realize I had been raped, but I realized that I had been stationed with him. And so it was years later that I realized what had happened to me, and it just kind of blew me away, you know.
Well, Preston, he says that he didn't commit any crimes out of hate, but you said you sensed racism and hate spewing out of him.
Yes. I was not afraid of Jeff. I actually knocked Jeff out because he urinated in my boots, and they moved him out of my room. And that was early on when I met him in probably July or August of '79. So he was definitely a racist. Mm-hmm. But it's not for me to say, you know, I'm not going to play the race card and say he was, you know, it was white privilege. But that's something Billy.
It was white privilege.
Yeah, I agree with that as well.
The charisma, the good-looking guy from Wisconsin, and he played all these people. And he's lying in that interview. He's lying. He was a practiced liar, practiced manipulator, practiced everything. How can you get like that young?
He would rape and beat you
continuously, all the time.
How many times a week?
I wasn't counting, sir, but I will tell you it was more than 5. It was more than, it depended on how much he drank. I actually stole his money out of his wall locker while I was doing that. I found ketamine bottles. I was a medic as well at 17 years old. I found ketamine. I found lorazepam or Ativan.
He kept you injured. He broke your hand.
He broke my
your
hip.
foot.
Yes.
He stabbed you.
He stabbed me, I think we counted 30 times. And this actually is a fingerprint right here.
I see that.
I'm grabbing here and choke.
He stabbed you 30 times.
He said that he was going to take my prostate out. I was tied up at the time. He had given me something IV, which as medics we had, you know, access to all that stuff.
You're in the military.
We're in
you
the
had a rape kit
military.
done.
You would never think that this would happen.
You told a nurse you had a rape kit done.
Right.
What happened?
She threw it away. And
Why?
I communicate with this nurse all the time. She's in a VA healthcare.
It's a senior or a VA.
She's been in there
old
since
soldiers home.
1984 or 5.
Yeah.
Institutionalized.
Institutionalized.
So somehow or another, she threw it away.
These guys need to understand, Ryan Murphy and all these people who develop this stuff need to understand that's what happens. I'm lucky I didn't kill myself. I attempted suicide 3 times. I was going to kill him, okay? I wanted to kill him.
All through the trial, they were trying to portray Jeffrey Dahmer as being insane and out of control, and you didn't buy that for a second.
No.
You thought this was purposeful, intentional, and he knew exactly what the hell he was doing.
You heard the 2 gentlemen. Yes. He started out with them and brought it on to Milwaukee.
Did you know that your brother had met him at the time, or was this something that you learned after the fact?
I learned after the fact. After the fact. I'm still learning. I'm still learning right today.
And what weighs on you the most heavily, Rita?
Every time I think that I'm done with the story, new stories come out, just like today. I feel so bad for the 2 gentlemen. I really feel bad for you. I do. That's why I'm crying right now. I'm crying for them.
When you think about this, do you think about Jeffrey Dahmer, or do you think about what your brother went through? What is it that haunts you the most?
Well, 31 years ago, the time has passed, so I was kind of dealing with it. But since the movie came out, and the way he told the movie and showed the movie and lied about him contacting us, he didn't contact none of us. And he said that he did, Ryan Murphy.
He did not contact you or anyone in your family?
No. No.
Let me read you a statement that he made. Ryan Murphy, the creator of the series Monster, claims he did reach out to victims prior to production of Monster. According to the Hollywood Reporter, quote, over the course of the 3.5 years when we were really writing it, working on it, we reached out to around 20 of the victims' families and friends, trying to get input, trying to talk to people, and not a single person responded to us in that process. So we relied very, very heavily on our incredible group of researchers who, I don't even know how they found a lot of this stuff, but it was just like a night and day effort to us trying to uncover the truth of these people. Tomorrow on an all-new Dr. Phil, a never-before-aired interview I did with Jeffrey Dahmer's parents. It was said that he had even impaled a dog's head.
He told me that he decapitated and put on a stake.
Tell me about the locked wooden box.
If I would have opened that box and found what was in there, I think I would have lost it.
But we now know the box contained a human head.
Yeah.
That's tomorrow. Check your local listings. Do you have a story or a question for me? Click the link in the description and tell me what in the world is going on.